Okay, so since I'm not gonna be able to have class on the Monday when we would normally be going over Excel Chapter 1, I'm doing this video in lieu of a class. So what it is I'm just going to give this as an introduction to Excel and kind of go over the stuff that's in Module 1. So first thing I'm going to do, just because I want a file to play with, I'm going to go to the class files and then download the file that I already have prepared for this class. So Excel Module 1, and I'm going to grab the before one. And then I'll just open that up. And so this is, when you open up the file, this is what you're going to get. But before we get into this, let me show you a little bit about some Excel stuff. So I'm going to create just a brand new worksheet. I just click this plus, and what you'll see is like, this was a sheet we were looking at before. It created a new sheet, and it called it Sheet 2. So anytime you need to create a new sheet in your workbook, you can just hit this plus sign, and it will add however many sheets you need to add. So just as a little bit of Excel, intro to Excel. This is the home ribbon in Excel. Let me minimize this. And I'll make this big screen. This is the home ribbon of Excel. And what you've got are these little boxes. What these boxes are called cells, and these cells contain data. And you can put anything in these cells you want to. You can put dates, you can put names, you can put email addresses, you can put whatever you want to put in there. And you can just type and it's going to go into that cell. Now, the one thing you need to figure out is where you're at when you're working with Excel. So the way Excel keeps track of your location in a spreadsheet is kind of like if you've ever played Battleship when you were a kid. It's where the columns and the rows intersect. So right now, I am in column F, row 9. So the address for this, if you look up here, you'll see that the address it's showing is F9. So I'm in cell F9, column F, row 9. And so this cell can contain as much data as I want to. So like if I keep typing, you'll see that it kind of actually even creeps outside of the cell. Now, it's not outside of the cell. Everything that's here, everything that I type is actually inside of this cell. It's in cell F9. And the reason I can tell this is because up here there's this bar, and this is called a formula bar. And what the formula bar will, it will always tell you what's in a cell. And I say this because sometimes what you see in a cell down here isn't really what's in a cell. And I'll show you an example of that a little bit later. But even though it looks like all of this stuff is actually creeped into cell G9, it hasn't. There's nothing in cell G9. I can tell that by if I can just click on cell G9, even though it looks like there's something in it, if I go up here in my formula bar, there's nothing in it. Same thing with H9. Looks like there's something in it, but there's really not. All of this stuff is in cell G9. And it's like, just to show you, if I wanted to, I could click in the cell G9 and start typing. And now all of this stuff is in G9. The stuff that was in F9 is still there. Everything's still there. So even though things sometimes creep outside of the box, it's okay. It's still inside of the cell. The bad thing about it is, like, when you look at this, you'll see you can't see everything that's in this cell just by looking at it. You look up here in the formula bar and see everything that's in it, but the cell doesn't show everything. But if I make this cell just a little bit wider, a whole lot wider, you can see that everything is still there. The way I made that cell wider was I just went up in between like F and G, and my mouse cursor becomes this two-headed arrow. And when it's like that, I can make the column, I can change the column or row width, height, whichever way I'm going. So just remember that, like, sometimes you can't always tell what's in a cell just by looking at the cell. It gets a little confusing sometimes, but this will come into play later on when there's formulas. Okay, so this cell with a border around it, this is what's called the active cell. So this is like, think of this as like your insertion point in Word. It's where everything happens. So if I'm here and I type, that's where it's going to go. Whatever I choose as my active cell, that's where the stuff is going to go. Let me make this stuff all go away. All right. All right. So back to the clean sheet. Okay, so selecting cells. So with using, one thing you're going to have to do when you're using Excel is be able to select a range of cells. And what a range of cells is just a group of cells. So like, I'm just going to click, and you see that my mouse is this big fat white plus sign. And when it's a big fat white plus sign, that means I can select cells. So all I got to do to select cells is I click my mouse, and then I can drag with my mouse held down on my left mouse key. I can click and drag, and now I have selected this range of cells. And so this range is going to be called F6 through F13. So that's the range of that cell, F6 through F13. Now I can select across columns too, so I can go over here and select like this way. Okay, just holding down on the left mouse key and selecting. So this range of cells is H6 through O21. So this is cell H6 and this is cell O21. So this is the range in between H6 and O21. Now, if for some reason you need to select an entire row or column, if you want to select an entire column, you just click on the letter of the column that you want to select. And the same thing with row, you just go over and click on the row and it will select the entire row. Now this selects the entire row or column throughout the entire spreadsheet. And these spreadsheets kind of gotta get big because you can see that this the columns run into letters, but after you get to Y, it starts all over again. A, B, and it just keeps going. Eventually you get into the B's and you see that now I'm in CH. So it just keeps going and going and going. And the same thing if you scroll down, you'll see that these numbers just get insane. And they get really, really big. I mean, like thousands and thousands and thousands of columns. But anyway, back home. So if you select an entire, if you select a range, I mean, just so you know that this range, this column or this row 11, you have selected this row all the way out to the end of the spreadsheet. So you're kind of going out to ZZZ because I think it actually starts running into 3 letters. So it can go all the way here. And if you select this column, you're selecting all the way the column all the way down to, you know, G 17,000 or however many rows that there are in a spreadsheet. Okay, so that's selecting a row or a column or a row. If you need to select individual cells and like a group of individual cells, it's just like we did in Word. You just hold down to the control key. So if I can hold down, I can click the first one and then hold the control key down and click whatever I want to click. And this is the way you select multiple non-adjacent cells. So just hold the control key down while you're clicking, and that will let you select multiple non-adjacent cells. Multiple adjacent cells, I can click on the first one, and then I hold the shift key down and select the last one, and it selects everything in between. So I clicked here, held the shift key down, and then clicked here, and it selected everything from E7 to F16. So that's how you select an entire range of cells. Okay, so one of the things that you've got to keep track of is what your mouse cursor looks like. So to select, you're going to need the big fat plus sign, this right here, and that's how you select cells. But there's this cool feature, and you're going to need to know how to do this when you're using Excel, called autofill. And what autofill does is it helps you when you're doing formulas or doing lists or something like that. So here's an example. So let's just say I want to do, and I'm going to go to this cell and I'm going to type the number 1. And then I'm going to go down one more cell and type the number 2. So I've got the cells at cell 1 and cell 2. So in F6, I have the number 1, and in F7, I have the number 2. So let's just suppose that I want to continue this list, 1, 2, and I want to continue it all the way down to 10. So what I can do is I can select both of these cells that have numbers in it. So I'm going to put my mouse in the cell with the number 1, hold my mouse key down and drag down. And now you'll see that both of these cells are selected. They're both in the same green box. So I have selected the range of cells F6 to F7. Now, rather than going down here and typing 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, what I can do is I can put my mouse, and you'll see when my mouse goes into this little bitty box in the corner, this little bitty square, it just sits there in the corner. My mouse changes from a big fat white plus sign to a skinny black plus sign. And when it does that, that's something called autofill, and I can use that to drag. And you'll see that there's like these little numbers off to the side that kind of shows you what's going to go in there when I let go of the mouse. So right now I'm going to stop at 10, and that fills in all of those cells from 1 to 10. Let's just do another one. This time I'm going to type the number 2, and here I'm going to type the number 4. So before I just increased this by 1, and what Excel does is it accepted this as a pattern. It said 1, 2 because I had both of these selected, and then when I did the autofill, it says, okay, let's continue this pattern. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And so now I'm going to do the same thing, but this time I'm going to do it with increments of 2. So I'm going to select both of the cells that have the pattern in it. So it's got 2, 4. Skinny black plus sign in the corner, drag down, and it stops. One more just to finish this off. 3. Go down 1, and then 6. Select them both so that I have the pattern, and then let the autofill do its thing. Now, we've done this. Now, just so you know, I've accidentally created a couple of other patterns. So I had 1, 2, boom, 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 2, 4, boom, 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 3, 6, boom, boom, boom. But also look here, I have 1, 2, 3, 2, 4, 6, 3, 6, 9, 4, 8, 12. I have all of this done too. So what I can do is, like, if I want to, I can continue this pattern this way by selecting the cells and dragging. But I can also take it even a step further, like watch this. I'm going to select all of these cells. I'm going to select the entire range of the cells that I have typed in there. And then I'm going to grab the plus out and then drag whichever way I want to go. Whoops. Skinny black plus sign. And you'll see that it continues this pattern over and over again. And so now I've got these crazy patterns. Like here's a pattern of 13s, 13, 26, 39, 52. Here's a pattern of 19s, 19, 38. So the autofill will take a pattern that you've already established and continue it on for you. Now, it can also do this with words. So like I go in here and type like Jan, like in January, and it'll go ahead and do the months for me. And again, it'll do it whichever way I tell it to go. Now, if I tell it to go, if I grab a hold of the mouse and I drag down or to the right, it's going to increase. If I drag up or to the left, whoops, this one. If I drag up or to the left, it's going to go backwards. So here it went January, December, November, October, January, December, November, October. Down, January, February, March, April, May. To the right, January, February, March, April, May. You can do that with Mondays and Tuesdays if you want to. So anytime you need to do that. Okay. So now let's talk about math. So when we're doing math in Excel, there's different ways of doing it. So I'm going to show you 3 different ways. One is just like a normal, and you're going to kind of learn as you do this more. It's like if sometimes it makes more sense to do a formula this way. Sometimes it makes more sense to do a formula in another way. Sometimes it makes more sense to just type the formula in, this plus that. Sometimes it makes more sense to select a range of cells and do a sum function or something like that. Anyway, you'll kind of learn what I'm doing. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add this thing together. I'm going to add 1 plus 2 plus 3. We can do it in our head, we know it's 6, but I'm going to do this with Excel. So This is like the first way we'll start off using a formula. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add one. I'm going to add the value. I have to say it this way. I'm going to add the value in this cell to the value in that cell to the value in that cell. So 1 plus 2 plus 3 is what it's going to end up being. So the way this works is I'm going to start a formula. Now just kind of watch this box right over here where it says I6, which is where this formula is going to go. It's going to change. We're not going to deal with it right now, but it's going to change as soon as I hit this equal. See how that changed to sum. This will come into play in a little bit. Okay, so when I hit equal, we started Excel's saying, okay, we're getting ready to deal with a formula. So here's what we're going to do. When you're doing a formula in Excel, this is rule number 1. Don't type any more than you have to. Just click on the cells and it's going to add the cells to the formula for you. So I'm going to click on this cell. I'm going to click on cell F6 where the number 1 is. And as soon as I click on it, a couple of things happen. 1, this blue flashy little border comes around. 2, the cell reference F6 pops into this formula. And then we'll say, I'm going to just hit the plus key. And then I'm going to select this cell, red, and then I'll hit the plus key. And then I'm going to select this cell, H6. So my formula reads equals the cell values F6 plus G6 plus H6. And as soon as I hit enter, it tells me that that value is 6. Now you remember earlier I told you that sometimes things that are in cells are not exactly what you think are in a cell. In other words, you can't look at a cell and say exactly what's in it. Because if I look at this cell here, I think that there's just a 6 in it. But actually that's not what's in this cell. This is just what is displayed. What's actually in this cell, if you look up at the formula bar, you'll see that it's actually a formula. F6 plus G6 plus H6. Okay, so that's one way to do a formula. Here's another way. This time you can tell I got 10 numbers to type to put into the formula. So rather than 1 plus 2 plus 3, this time it's going to be, this cell plus this cell plus this cell plus this cell plus, 10 cells that I've got to add together. So in this example, perhaps just doing a basic formula isn't necessarily going to be our easiest way. So what we need to do this time is we're going to select a range of cells and say what we're going to do to it. Now what we need to do is add the values of these cells together. So adding, when you add things together, what you come up with is a sum. So we're going to use a sum function to add all of these cell values together. So we're going to start our formula off, and again, look at this old cell right here. You're going to see that it changes. We're going to start this formula off just the same way we did before. We're going to hit equal. And you'll see up here now we have this box that says sum. Now, here's the tricky thing. A couple of tricky things you got to pay attention to. Even though this says sum, it's not part of your formula until you click on it. So just because you see sum up here doesn't mean you're automatically doing, adding things together. You've got to actually click on that. And when you click on it, a couple of things happen. One, it pops this cell reference in here, and it gives you what it thinks you're looking for. And it also opens up this box. Now, I tell you everybody this every semester, I ignore this box all over the place just because it's not wrong often, but it's wrong enough that it messes you up. So what I do, rather than even pay attention to what's in here, I will go ahead, hold my mouse key down, and select my range. And so now you can see that my formula reads equals sum F6 through F15. F6 is this cell right here through F15, which is right here. So what it's going to do is it's going to add the values of those cells and give you the total of those things. So if I hit enter, 55. So again, what's in this cell? This formula, the sum F6 through F15. All right, one more way of doing this, and this may even be the easier way, but sometimes it's a little bit complicated if it doesn't automatically select what you want it to select. So rather than, I'm just going to select the cell that I want the formula to go in. So we'll put cell G16. So I'm going to go up here into my editing ribbon or editing box on my home ribbon, and there's a box that says auto sum, and there's like different options of things that you can use, but I'm just going to select sum. And again, it's going to select what it thinks it wants me to use. Now you've got to be careful about this because it will just select numbers that are next to each other. Maybe you don't want all of those numbers included in your formula. But if you do, you're okay, hit enter, and now you get the total of this. Now here's the cool thing about this. I don't have to do this for every single cell. So like here is a formula that says F6 plus G6 plus H6. Well, in the next cell down, this one right here, I actually want this to be F7 plus G7 plus H7. I want this to be F8 plus G8 plus H8. So what I want to do is I want to copy this formula down, but rather than using these references, as I drag down, I want it to use every single row that's beside where I want the formula to go. So again, this is where that handy dandy little sizing handle comes into play. So I'm just going to do this one time. So right now, if you look up here, my formula reads equals F6 plus G6 plus H6. And I'm just going to drag this down one cell. And you'll see that it gives me 12. But if you look up in my formula bar, look what it gives me. In my formula bar, it says F7 plus G7 plus H7. If I drag it down one more, click on it, F8 plus G8 plus H8. So what it's doing is it's saying, okay, in this cell, he wanted to add these numbers together. And then he drug down, so that must mean in this cell, he wants these numbers added together. In this cell, he wants these numbers added together. And you don't have to do this one at a time. I can click on the first one and just drag it down. And it will do all of the formulas for me, depending on how I drag. And the same with these formulas. If I click on these and drag them across, it's going to, however I did the formula the first time, it's going to remember it and do this thing on the autofill numbers. This is handy, but it can get a little bit confusing. You'll see a little bit more of this when I come back on the second video and we start messing with real numbers. So I'm gonna let this video render, and I'll be back. Just check for another video or video number 2. So talk to you later.